You can hear it sometimes, right before sleep, that high-pitched wind, like a whistle trailing through the cracks of something ancient. But what if that whistle isn't wind at all? There's something about deserts that makes the world feel unfinished. Wide, flat expanses where time has no meaning and heat warps even your thoughts. And yet, people venture out into them. For thrill, for peace, for isolation. Some never come back the same. Some never come back at all. Before we begin, let me say this. These stories are not just strange. They're not just eerie. They are real accounts, confessions, even of people who went into the desert expecting solitude and silence, but found something else, something that followed them back. And if you think you'll be fine just because you're not in the desert, watch till the very end. One of these stories never left the sand, but another one did. It's still out there. Don't forget to subscribe if you appreciate true horror told with respect. And share this video with someone who loves a story that'll sit in their bones long after the screen goes dark. So let me take you there. It starts with a man named Joel. Or, at least, that's the name he gave. Joel used to hike solo. National parks, abandoned roads, wild terrain, you name it, he'd been through it. But he had a particular fascination with desert ruins. Not the touristy kind. The ones you need a four-wheel drive, 2 gas cans, and a flare gun to reach. He said the silence out there was different. Not peaceful, aware, like something was listening. This happened in the Sonoran Desert, southern Arizona, mid-July. Temperatures near 115 during the day, dropping just enough at night to keep a man from going mad. Joel had been out there 3 days. Just him, his Jeep, and a map marked with a place only referenced in an old geological survey. Z13, stone depressions and collapsed mine shaft. Not safe. He got there around 5 p.m. The sun was low, bleeding orange through the ridgelines. No cell service, obviously. The shaft was real, a black void in the ground with rusted fence around it. And near it, strange stones, stacked, not quite a cairn, but deliberate. Like someone or something had left them there for a reason. Joel said the first sign something was wrong wasn't visual. It was the air. Still but not dead, like being watched from every direction, but you can't tell where from. He spent the night nearby, parked beside a dried-out wash, setting up camp. That's when the dreams began. Only they weren't dreams. He woke up to a rhythmic thudding, like someone dragging something heavy in a circle around the tent. Not walking. Not stomping, dragging. It circled once, then silence. Then again, he waited, gripping a knife hard in his throat. Hours passed. Nothing. But in the morning, there were prints. Around the tent. Huge. Too wide for a man, too narrow for a bear. And next to them, tiny barefoot prints. Like a child's. That was enough. He packed fast. But when he got back to the shaft to check his GPS, everything was gone. The fence vanished. The rocks gone. Just open desert, untouched. He drove in a panic, heading west until he found a ranger station 2 days later. Half-starved, sunburned, shaking. They found tire tracks leading nowhere. But no hole, no fence, no prints. The desert had swallowed it. You'd think Joel was making it up, until you checked the photos he took. He only had one left on his phone. The rest were corrupted, but the one, a blurred figure, pale, hairless, kneeling by the tent, long arms tucked in tight, and a face, no mouth. When Joel sent that photo to me, he said, "It's still in my head. When I close my eyes, it's closer. I think I let it out." And that's why I'm telling you this, because maybe you've seen it too, in dreams. Maybe you've heard that dragging sound. The desert doesn't always keep its ghosts, but Joel wasn't the only one. In 1993, a woman named Teresa and her brother Mike went off-roading near the Mojave. They were in their 20s, carefree, no fear. They planned a simple overnight trip. But on the second night, they stumbled on something ancient. They weren't looking for anything, just walking, enjoying the stars. But Mike tripped, literally fell, into a shallow depression in the sand. Teresa helped him up, and they realized they were standing in a perfect circle, 12 feet across, dug into the earth, but old, real old, all around the edges, carved into the stone, were symbols neither of them recognized. Geometric, like maps or diagrams. They thought it might be Native American, but it felt too strange, not tribal. Mechanical, they left it alone, mostly. But that night, Mike woke up screaming. Teresa turned on the flashlight and found him standing outside the tent, hands over his ears, eyes wide open but not seeing. He kept yelling, "It's too loud, it's in the ground." She said the sand was vibrating under her feet. And then silence. Mike collapsed. The next morning, he didn't remember any of it. He just said he dreamed about a wheel made of bone, turning, screaming. They went home, didn't tell anyone. But 6 months later, Mike stopped sleeping. Said the wheel was back. Said the stars in the desert had moved. That the sky was wrong. He took his own life in 1994. Left a single note. It's not the heat. It's the hum. It's always been humming. Teresa spent years trying to forget. But in 2021, she contacted a geologist through Reddit who was studying underground magnetic patterns in Mojave. She described the circle. Sent him drawings. His reply, "You found a listening site, but not ours." And then he deleted his account. Now you might think this is all coincidence. Trauma, heat stroke, hallucination. But here's where it gets worse. Because our final story, at least for now, is still unfolding. A guy named Malik, a desert photographer, went out to document abandoned Air Force installations in Nevada. Legitimate ones you can Google. Decommissioned radar towers, forgotten barracks, things like that. But in early 2023, he started getting emails from someone calling themselves Juno_91. No message, just coordinates. When Malik plugged them in, he found an unmarked location, deep in Amargosa Desert. He went. Of course he did. People like Malik chase mystery. But what he found wasn't military. It was a sculpture. That's the best word for it. Dozens of metal poles, stuck in the ground in precise angles, pointing at the sky, wires connecting them in strange geometric webs. In the center, a stone seat, not a bench, not a place to rest, a chair facing east. He took photos, uploaded one to Twitter with the caption, "Anyone seen this before? Middle of nowhere. Creepy vibes." The tweet blew up, but the next day his account vanished. Gone. Deleted. All other photos? Scrambled. Static and black bars. Except one. A video, 10 seconds long. Just wind, sky, poles. But at the end, faintly you hear it. The dragging sound. The dragging sound. Malik hasn't posted since. His friends say he's alive, but different. He won't talk about the desert. He keeps all his windows blacked out. And every morning at sunrise, he sits facing east in a chair he built himself. There's something out there, in the silence, beneath the dust, watching, waiting. Maybe it doesn't need worshipers. Maybe it just needs us to look. So if you ever find yourself in the desert and you feel the ground start to hum, or hear a sound like something being dragged in a circle, don't ignore it. And whatever you do, don't follow the coordinates, because some things aren't buried. Some things are just patient. Please, if this story disturbed you, let that feeling sit with you. Don't scroll away just yet. There's more, much more. The next story changes everything. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Not just for more horror, but because sometimes the only way to fight the darkness is to tell others what you saw. Stay with me. There's something especially cruel about the desert. You expect the cold in the mountains. You expect the darkness in the woods. But the desert? It looks empty, bright, barren. It feels like nothing could survive there. But something does. Not everything haunting is ancient. Some horrors are recent, just buried under sun, silence, an illusion of wide-open safety. This next story is not just terrifying, it's a warning. Nadia was a field researcher working on migratory bird patterns across the American Southwest. In 2019, she was stationed at a small, remote outpost in southern New Mexico one of those prefab trailers with solar panels and a weather antenna. She was alone for 6 days at a time, logging data and checking tracking devices. She loved it, the quiet, the stars, the occasional vulture soaring silently overhead. But then she started seeing lights, not above her, below. In the valley about a mile off, near an abandoned homestead, a spot she'd marked on her maps as Uninhabited Zone D, she saw them. At first, they flickered like lanterns, orange and soft. Then they moved, fast, in spirals, and then gone. Nadia wasn't easily spooked. She thought it was a drone or maybe a reflection from her equipment. But on the third night, she heard something. It wasn't an animal. At 2:13 a.m., her data recorder picked up a strange signal, a high-frequency tone lasting exactly 12 seconds, then silence, then a faint voice whispering, not in English. The weirdest part? She couldn't hear the whisper in real time, only on the playback. So she went looking. She packed water, a flashlight, and her field recorder and headed into the dry basin where the lights had been. The temperature dropped unusually fast. Within minutes, the air was biting cold. She found the homestead, a single adobe shack with no roof, half buried in sand. Bones littered the ground. Small ones, animals she assumed, but inside, carved into the walls, were rows and rows of eyes. Dozens, hundreds, not drawn, scraped, each with 3 vertical slits instead of 1 pupil. Some open, some closed, and on the back wall, in a different script, they learned to blink. Now they see US. She left, ran actually, but when she got back to her trailer, her laptop was on. She hadn't left it that way. And on the screen was a folder she hadn't created. Eyes_02. Inside, dozens of images. Frame grabs from her own video recordings, but edited. In every image, a single extra figure, tall, pale, mouthless, stood in the distance, watching her. Sometimes just outside the trailer, sometimes behind her. She tried to email the files, but the folder vanished as soon as she connected to Wi-Fi, like it was never there. 2 months later, she quit her job, moved back to the city. She says she doesn't look out windows at night anymore. Says her eyes feel watched from inside, and she's not the only one. There's a camp in Utah, no official name. Just a few broken down trailers near an old mesa. Hikers say it's cursed. Locals refuse to talk about it, but one story slipped through. In 2008, a desert vlogger named Ray disappeared for 3 days near that area. When he returned, he was barefoot, dehydrated, and whispering in a language no one understood. He was found 40 miles from where he'd last uploaded a video. Police said it was heat stroke, but when his camera was recovered, shattered but with the SD card intact, it told a different story. The footage begins normally. Ray hiking, sweating, talking to the camera. Then silence. Then nightfall. Then screams. Not Ray's. Something else. Something far away, but getting closer. The last frames are static. And then something steps into view. Not fully visible. Just limbs. Too many joints. Crawling, not walking. A second later, the video ends. The timestamp reads 3 hours, 33 minutes, and 33 seconds. People say if you listen closely to the last second of that footage, you can hear Ray whisper one word. Again. He hasn't spoken since. He's alive, but mute, and he scratches at his own skin until he bleeds unless he's sedated. His family moved him across the country. But even now, at 3:33 a.m., he screams in his sleep. Always the same phrase. Don't blink. They hate when you blink. It's like something open out there, something that wants to be seen. And once you see it, it sees you. Still think it's just the heat? Let me tell you about the kids. 2 friends, Aaron and Caleb, decided to spend a weekend exploring Joshua Tree in the spring of 2017. College students, cameras in hand. TikTok hadn't blown up yet, but they were documenting everything anyway. They never made it past night 1. According to the park ranger, their car was found parked perfectly in a designated spot. Doors locked, belongings untouched. But 300 feet away, in a patch of brush rarely used by campers, they found something else. 2 sleeping bags, side by side, unzipped, empty, and in the dirt nearby, drawn in careful circles, were childlike handprints, not footprints, just handprints, as if someone had crawled all the way there and stopped. Aaron was found 4 days later, wandering barefoot in the desert, sunburned, silent, and holding something, a teddy bear. It wasn't his. When they asked where Caleb was, he just shook his head and said, "The baby's still learning to walk." They never found Caleb. They found bones, but they weren't human. And in Aaron's notebook, which he always carried, there were dozens of pages scribbled over and over with the same phrase, "Sen learns fast." He was institutionalized later that year, but the park ranger who found him, he went missing 6 months later, vanished while walking his dog at dusk. Only the dog came back, covered in dirt. Some say there's a spot in Joshua Tree where the ground feels soft, like something's breathing just beneath, like you'll sink if you stand too long. The earth isn't dead out there. It's just hungry. And here's the part that keeps coming back. These stories don't begin and end. They ripple, like heat, like waves in the sand. Because you'll notice something strange if you look into them long enough. Dates overlap. People say the same phrases without knowing each other. There are drawings, carvings, numbers, repeated again and again. 333, eyes with 3 pupils, circles with missing corners. The name Juno. They surface like fossils in different parts of the desert, different years, but always the same message. It's learning. Something's learning, and it's using us to do it. You don't always realize when a place is wrong. Somewhere deep in your brain, something reacts, a flicker of tension, a skipped heartbeat, but your eyes lie to you. The sky is clear, the sand is still, the wind is soft, but it doesn't feel right. That's what happened to Marcos. He wasn't a ghost hunter. He wasn't into folklore or horror or anything like that. He just liked to drive. Old highways, forgotten roads, especially near dusk. He said the desert made him feel honest. But one night changed everything. It was late September, just outside of Amboy, California. Marcos was heading north, planning to sleep in his car before hitting the next town. The road was empty, just headlights and blackness. He passed an old, rusted sign. It had no name on it, just a symbol. 3 overlapping circles, like a broken chain. His radio turned to static. At first, he thought it was just a bad signal, but then it stopped playing static and started playing something else. Not music, not words, breathing, slow, labored, like someone was sitting inches from the microphone, like someone was listening to him breathe back. Marcos pulled over. He says now, he doesn't remember doing it. Just that one moment he was driving, and the next, he was sitting on the hood of his car, engine off, desert wind brushing his face. Everything was still. He stared up at the stars, and they weren't where they should be. The constellations, they were off. Orion had too many points. The Big Dipper had become a perfect circle. And then he heard it, under the dirt, under the car, a scratching sound, slow, deliberate, from beneath. He ran. Not far, just down the road, heart pounding, stumbling in the dark. When he turned back, the car was gone. He stood in open desert with no road behind him. No lights, no sound. He walked. Hours. At least, that's what it felt like. Eventually, he saw something in the sand. A small metal sign, half buried, with 3 faded words. Wait here quietly. He sat down, like something told him to. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, it was morning, and he was behind the wheel of his car, parked at a gas station 50 miles away. Gas tank full, radio silent, not a scratch on him, but on the passenger seat, someone had left a piece of paper. Just one sentence, handwritten, "It's listening through you now." He burned the paper, traded the car, never drove at night again. And still, he says sometimes the static comes back. Always at 3:33 a.m., always just before a voice whispers something he can't remember after waking. There's a pattern in these stories, one that people miss the first time. They think it's about isolation, exposure, madness brought on by the elements. But they're wrong. It's not about being alone. It's about being noticed. Something ancient doesn't just live in the desert. It notices people who notice it back. And once it does, it follows. Sometimes literally. In 2002, a geophysicist named Dr. Unexplained was researching seismic anomalies along the edge of the Great Basin Desert in Nevada. Quiet woman, private, no family. Her logs were methodical. Dates, coordinates, temperature, pressure. But starting in October that year, her notes changed. She began recording vibrations with no origin, patterns in the dirt that didn't match any wind flow. She wrote about shapes appearing in her campsite, triangles and side circles, always facing the same direction. Then came the dreams. Each log entry after that began with a dream description before the data. Always the same dream. She was standing under the desert sky, but the sky was flesh, and it was breathing. 3 nights before she vanished, she wrote. It has a pulse. The desert has a pulse. I think we're inside something. Her camp was found abandoned, equipment gone, tent shredded from the inside. In the dirt around the site, there were footprints, hundreds of them, circling outward, as if someone had walked in expanding spirals until they disappeared. No body was found, but something else was. Her handheld radio recorder, still running. One final audio file. 9 minutes of silence. Then this, a whisper, too loud. Go quiet, go quiet, go quiet, go quiet, go quiet, go quiet. Then a long pause. Then a wet, organic sound, like something dragging across skin. Then laughter, but not human laughter. Not exactly. More like something trying to mimic a laugh. Something that I'd heard before, but didn't know what it meant. There are people who think Dr. Mather found a biological ecosystem under the desert. Something living beneath the surface for thousands of years. Something waiting, learning, listening. Others think she simply went mad. But one of her journals turned up in an estate sale a year later, found in a box of unrelated papers. Inside were pages and pages of symbols, carvings, a sketch of the desert horizon with a sentence written in red ink. We live on its back. We were never the first. This thing, whatever it is, doesn't just haunt. It copies. It repeats. It watches. And then, sometimes, it pretends to be one of us. This brings us to a story that makes less sense than the others, but might be the most important. A man calling himself Travis contacted an independent journalist in 2016. He wouldn't say his real name, wouldn't say what branch of the government he worked for, but he had a story. In 1997, he said he was part of a small team assigned to a containment survey in the Utah desert. No public knowledge, no media. The objective, survey and photograph a 4-mile stretch of land that had become unstable. Though not geologically, they were warned. No notes, no samples, no recordings. Stay 72 hours, then leave, they were told. If you start seeing yourselves, get out immediately. No one knew what that meant until the second night. Travis said it started when one of the men came back to camp. Early, too early. He'd been seen leaving just 10 minutes earlier. Now he was back. Same face, same voice, but different. He didn't blink. When they asked him what route he took, he said, "I took the inside path." There was no inside path. The team panicked, tied him up, tried to contact base. Nothing worked. The radios emitted only one thing: their own voices, repeated back at them, distorted and overlapping like a chorus, a choir of their own terror, echoing into itself. Then came the knocking on the walls of the tent. One knock every 3 minutes. They counted 16 before someone broke. When the rescue team finally arrived, they found only one man left, Travis, sitting in a shallow pit, surrounded by shoes, pairs of them, all size 10. Travis wasn't a size 10. He wouldn't say what happened after that, only that when he closes his eyes, He sees himself smiling back, but it's not his smile, and his shadow sometimes moves before he does. These aren't stories you hear at campfires. They don't end with scream or a neatly explained ghost. They fester. They leave behind a residue that you feel but can't shake, like something in your teeth you can't spit out, a taste of something dry and ancient and watching. The desert isn't dead. It just pretends to be, and some things beneath it are getting better at pretending they're human. You probably noticed it by now. It doesn't matter where these stories start, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah. It doesn't even matter when. Something always folds back in. The voices, the markings, the distortions, the same timestamps, the same symbols, and the same silence. There's a pattern to deserts, just like there's a pattern to decay. You don't see the rot until you're standing in it, and by then it's too late. This story was never meant to be public. It came from a private server used by wilderness medical teams, rescue units who go into uncharted areas when people disappear. The audio was leaked, briefly, scrubbed within hours, but a transcript survived. It's labeled Incident G64, echoed patient. The responding unit was sent into the Great Sand Dunes area in Colorado. The report said a solo backpacker had activated a distressed beacon. Location was vague. Weather was clear. Team arrived before nightfall. They found a man curled in a depression of sand, unmoving, breathing but unresponsive. He was surrounded by feathers, hundreds of them, all black. One respondent described the man as wet to the touch, but completely dry. Another noted his eyes were open but empty, as if he was watching something the rest of them couldn't see. They loaded him into the transport. During the drive out, he started whispering, a single sentence, over and over. I walked into sound. That's when things changed. The radio cut out. The GPS scrambled. The roads didn't look the same anymore. The dunes, visible for miles, were suddenly gone. Only open ground. Flat, endless, with no landmarks at all. Then a second voice came from the back. Another whisper, identical to man's, but he hadn't moved. One of the responders turned to look. Just for a second, the patient's mouth wasn't moving, but the whispering continued, then stopped, and then just silence. They pulled over, got out, scanned the vehicle. Nothing, until one of them opened the rear door and found the patient, smiling. First time he'd changed expression. But then came the voice again, from the responder who had just opened the door. She whispered the same sentence. I walked into the sound. Over and over. Her eyes went wide and she collapsed. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. Her pulse was normal, but she wouldn't respond. They flew her out the next morning. According to the final line of the transcript, she later woke up, but she never remembered her name again. She just kept drawing the same thing, over and over on napkins, bed sheets, her own arms. A perfect circle, filled with teeth. And that backpacker? He died the next night, but not before whispering one final thing. It didn't want me. It was learning through me. There are theories. Maybe it's some kind of entity buried beneath the dunes, picking up signals, learning how to mimic thought, voice human form. Maybe it uses trauma like a frequency. Maybe each person who returns from the desert with strange eyes, strange shadows, strange dreams, they're like pieces of it, like extensions. But there's one last story, and it doesn't come from a witness. It comes from a man who used to write horror fiction. Used to. He lived in Flagstaff, Arizona, on the edge of nothing. Worked at a gas station by day. Wrote stories at night. Short stories. Weird desert tales. The kind people read and say, wow, you have an imagination. But in 2014, something changed. He posted a story online about a place in the Mojave where people walk backward after sundown, a town that doesn't appear on maps. He described its layout in perfect detail. Street names, building styles, population count. He claimed he'd made it up until someone emailed him a picture. It was a satellite image of the town. Identical, down to the street layout. The email had no text, just one line in the subject. How did you know? He stopped writing after that, but he kept dreaming. He told a friend later that he started sleepwalking, not just around the house, miles. One morning, he woke up with his feet full of sand and a camera in his pocket. He doesn't own a camera. On the camera card were 12 images. 11 of them were pitch black. The 12th showed something blurry, close to the lens, reaching toward it. Not a person. No eyes. Just long, veined fingers and something in the background. A road sign. 3 circles, overlapping, like a broken chain. He burned the card, but the image kept showing up. On his laptop, on his phone, as his desktop wallpaper. Even when he wiped the drive, he changed locations, moved in with his sister. But the sleepwalking continued. She found him one night standing in the backyard, eyes open, whispering toward the desert. I told them what you wanted. Then silence. He hasn't spoken since. Some say he tried to map the stories, that all of them trace a shape, not a straight line, not a spiral, a design, something old, something that's been trying to describe itself through us, piece by piece, story by story. And now there's a theory. What if every time someone experiences something out there, every strange sighting, every whisper, every car symbol, every set of extra footprints, what if that's not the desert giving something to us? What if it's taking something? Your memory, your face, your voice, your dreams, and leaving behind something that looks like you, but isn't. People think mirrors are dangerous, but what about reflections in silence? What about the version of you that's seen only by the land? There's a moment that keeps repeating across multiple stories. A phrase that shows up in logs, journals, scratched into metal signs, muttered in sleep recordings. We are the blueprint. It is the builder. Some say this means the desert is growing something, building it. Others say we are the thing it's building. The worst story? It's one I debated even including, because it doesn't feel like fiction. It feels like a warning. A satellite technician, unofficial source, claimed that years ago, an orbital scan over the southern Nevada desert picked up something strange. A perfectly straight indentation, miles long, not visible from the ground, just missing heat, like something beneath the earth was absorbing light, bending it inward. They sent a drone. The footage was corrupted, but the telemetry showed it didn't crash. It landed on something, soft, and then shut off. The last thing it transmitted was audio, only a second long. But if you slow it down, stretch it out, clean it up, you hear one thing, breathing, so loud it shakes the signal, like something enormous had just opened its lungs. Whatever's under the desert, whatever watches through the sand, whatever learns through whispers and shapes and symbols, it doesn't want worship. It doesn't want sacrifice. It wants form. It wants skin. And maybe we're not telling these stories. Maybe they're telling themselves, through us, one sentence at a time.